Hello mamas, Laura here, and today we are chatting all about baby carriers, a topic I get asked about almost every day. Enjoy!
Hey mama, I'm sending you wonderful pregnancy vibes. It's time for you to guide you through. Let's take some time for you. It's Pregnancy with Physio, Laura.
Hello mamas, and welcome back to the Pregnancy with Physio Laura podcast. Today we are kicking off with episode 4 in our Kids Physio series, diving into baby carriers. So we'll chat about the best carriers to consider, what to look for when it comes to a baby's position in the carrier, and when is a good time to turn them forward facing. Now, given the popularity of carriers these days, this episode from the perspective of a baby's development is really, really important. Now, this is episode 4 of a 5-part Kids Physio series with the incredible Nicole Pates, our titled paediatric physiotherapist. And if you haven't already listened to the first 3 episodes in this series, go back and give them a listen because we do chat about the importance of play when it comes to achieving baby milestones and ways in which we can find more joy in our parenting journey. We also discuss the different ways to do tummy time and how to encourage your child to crawl by making slight alterations in your environment. And there is still so much amazing information coming up for the rest of this Kids Physio series. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Pregnancy with Physio Laura podcast so that you don't miss an episode. Now, in the last episode of this Kids Physio series, we'll be covering baby toys and activity centers and whether they are helpful or harmful to your child's development. And remember, we also have the 4 bonus videos exclusively available to Pregnancy Posse members where Nicole talks us through different play-based ideas for babies aged 0 to 3 months old. Now, this entire podcast series and all our other podcast series, along with all our exclusive member-only bonus content, is all live right now inside the Pregnancy Posse. So if you'd love to access all the bonus content and listen to or watch this entire podcast series right now, rather than waiting for any future episodes to be released, then please come and check out the Pregnancy Posse. I've gone and taken my years of experience helping pregnant and postnatal women as a women's health physiotherapist and made this accessible to every wonderful woman online inside the Pregnancy Posse. So when you join the posse, I will guide you week by week through your pregnancy with safe and gentle weekly workouts tailored to your exact week of pregnancy. I also do a weekly Q&A session where I answer all of the questions from our amazing posse members. And there is a wonderful community forum where members all support each other, along with a beautiful resources library with topics on everything under the sun to do with pregnancy. Now, I would love to help you have a healthy, active, pain-free pregnancy. So just head over to thepregnancyposse.com to see what the Pregnancy Posse is all about and to trial it for 7 days. Now, let's get into episode 4 of our 5-part Kids Physio series. Let's chat all about baby carriers and why they are so fabulous for our children and how to use them effectively and safely. Enjoy.
Now, you mentioned that you loved baby carriers, and this is definitely something I wanted to talk to you about because I feel like they're a lot more popular these days than even when I had my first child 3 or 4 years ago. I love them as a parent. I find them extremely helpful. What's your take on them from the baby's point of view? So do you think that they're a good option for babies to be in? And if so, talk to us about the things that parents should be looking out for in terms of head support, hip position. When are they going to be ready to turn around and things like that?
Yep. So the first thing I always say with carriers is that none of us are the same shape and our babies aren't the same shape either. So when people are like, what carrier do you recommend? I'm like, well, I'm recommending the one that fits my body type and my baby's body type. But there are so many on the market, and the Physio Association in Australia used to recommend one specific one, but I don't think they do anymore. What I suggest now to parents and is to go to their local baby wearing association. So there's Baby Wearers Australia and there's baby wearing consultants who have like a variety of carriers, and you can try them on. You can try, and people say, oh, my baby really hates it. I'm like, well, is it the carrier, or is it like, what is it that they're not liking? Because there's such a variety. So if you do want to use carrier, that's what I recommend. That's why I never give them as like baby shower gifts, because you don't know what your baby take your baby, go and have a fitting and chat to them, or even just chat to them about your baby and try a few different types on, because I think that's the best way to pick one that's going to work long term. Always pick one that's going to grow with your baby, so that can grow as they get bigger. And I have really big babies, so I needed ones that were quite sturdy. I love carriers, and there's some beautiful research coming through about carriers and attachment. And there was a research study in America that looked at teen mums who really didn't want to have a baby, and they did sort of a control study where they put one group with carriers, and they found that the attachment and security was a significant difference in that group, because you have baby on you and you learn to read those early distress cues, and you learn to, like they're starting to get irritable and different things like that. And so I love them from that perspective of if you're really wanting to, if you're stuck and you're like, I need to figure out my baby a little bit more, carriers can be really helpful for that. Because you are there all the time, and it's the fourth trimester, like they've been inside you. That is such a natural position to be on you as well. There is, from a physio point of view, the bub's hips are still developing after birth, and there's some beautiful research about hip development and how like the hip's really deep, at 20 weeks antenatal, and then it becomes shallower over time because there's less movement, and the movement is what helps that. And then they're stuck up against your spine with their left leg, and so that's why hip dysplasia is more commonly left, because it's not. Anyway, there's some beautiful research.
Really?
Yeah, but when we know that we can influence the risk or the development of hip dysplasia through swaddling, so if we swaddle their legs really tight together. And that comes across to baby carriers too. So when your bub's in a baby carrier, you want them to have an M position with their bum down and their knees coming up and then around, because that's a really lovely, that frog leg position puts the hip in a really lovely position to develop and sort of have that beautiful coverage and deepen. And if you're when people use a carrier, it's unlikely that they're going to use it for 10 or 15 minutes. It's usually prolonged. So that's why we talk about this a lot, is because if bub's spending 2 hours in the carrier, having a nap in the carrier, walking around with bub in the carrier throughout the day, that positioning is important. When the carrier has a narrower crotch, so that, there's less, or it's less supportive, or their legs are dangling and their legs come down, that is similar to that swaddling position where the ball and the socket joint of the hip isn't in that optimal position. If you spend a long time there, it will influence the way the hip shape develops. So again, with everything in life, and we'll come to this in a little bit later, time and the time that you use things is part of that reasoning and thought process. So, and then I would always follow the carrier's recommendation about newborn inserts and kilos and things like that. And lots of people will say to me, but I've turned my bub front facing at 3 months because they just hate being on me, like not being able to see, and they don't want to be in the bassinet anymore, pram attachment. And my first question is why don't they like that, rather than like, okay, like that's a good solution. It's like, well, why don't they like that? Like, is it because it's stretching their neck? Is it stretching their hips? Like, are they, what's their movement like? Let's have a look at these things. Are they refluxy? Like, what else is going on that, might be contributing to why they don't want to be flat, or why they don't want to be, what's happening, rather than just going, okay, you turn them forward facing, because their hips are still developing at 3 months, and the standpoint generally is around turn around. If you want to turn them around 6 months. But my general rule is for social and fun. So short times for social fun times, so that they can have that eye contact. But you really want them to be able to be almost sitting independently. And if you hold their hips and they're sitting up nice and tall, because that means they have the strength in their spine to be, flat against you and forward facing. It's about head control and hip development, but it's like, it's all those factors together. But then again, there's so much variance in development. Some bubs hips and they're sitting by 3.5, 4 months. So it's really hard to, that's the general rule, but it doesn't count for those kids that are, starting to crawl at 5 months and sitting by 4 months. And there's different things, and that's why I don't like to talk about blanket topics, but the general advice from the Healthy Hips Australia and the hip dysplasia org is 6 months to turn them around. But there's always outliers, and there's always different factors. And again, the time, you wouldn't want a baby to fall asleep forward facing or be spending 3 hours there. But anyway, but my husband will still take her forward facing for like 2 hours. I'm like, that's what he wants to do. It's really hard to
Yeah, they don't listen. I was going to ask, is there a guideline on how long they should or shouldn't spend rear facing? I'm thinking of car seats, like with their face towards you. Is there a limit or is there an advice around that?
No, there's not. Obviously, I come back to variety.
Yeah.
Variety in movement and posturing. That's what I come back to. But the other thing is I come to is your mental, like the parents' mental well-being. Like if your bub is really having a difficult time for a number of factors and being in the carrier gives you 3 or 4 hours of like, okay, then that's great. It's like bouncers or like, you can get bouncers attached to high chairs like reclined things attached to high chairs. Like people are like, oh, no containers. I'm like, but if you can put them in there and you can cook dinner and they can watch you and they can see what you're doing on the stove at like 8 weeks and they're happy, rather than like, it's not as safe for them to have in the carrier by the stove.
Hot oil and
yeah. You've got to balance your family needs and your family situation, and spending a certain amount of time in one thing, like occasionally, is not like spending 4 hours in there every single day. But if it means that you're more ready for play and they're more ready for play and you're happier and you're more attached, then that is also. But I don't know. I don't think there are guidelines about how long for into you, out to you. Some people say 15 to 20 minutes, but that flies by. I think you need to make sure you've got good hip support if it's going to be a longer period of time, and you also need to be, because it's hard to see your baby when they're facing outwards, but you need to be wary of tired signs and fatigue and head tilting and that posturing. Like you'll know your baby's best, and every baby will have different endurance factors, but they'll give you guidelines of like 20 minutes because that's an average that some babies will be able. Some babies will be 10 minutes before they're like, oh, this is really hard work, and other babies will be like, oh no, it's easier. And obviously the older they get, that changes as well. So
yeah, definitely.
And
look, from a women's health physio point of view, I like what you said.
Not great feedback.
Yeah, you've got to see what works for you and for bubs, and find a really healthy middle balance, because for a lot of women it can make a prolapse feel worse, or it can make low back pain feel worse, and nothing is ever worth anyone's suffering for. So even if you're getting this beautiful attachment time or baby's more settled, it's got to be that balance between, it shouldn't be at the detriment of either. So there's definitely
that comes to like if you're thinking about all these things, it actually comes back to motor development. Like one of the, like that security with you and as a parent, and them knowing that that's even more of a factor as well. So it's not a recipe. It's not like do this and it'll be great. It's like what works for you and your family. And sometimes that's really hard to figure out on your own, especially if you're a new parent, and it's your first time. And I think there's a lot of onus put back on you to figure it out on your own, and it shouldn't be that way. And if you're not sure, well, like find someone to talk to about it, because you're not meant to know everything.
No. Yeah, and that's why I encourage everyone to have a second child if you can, because you're so much better once you've had one.
And you've had that. It's like anything with life, like that second time round experience is so much less anxiety provoking, because you've gone through it once and pretty good, and
happy with the result. I tell you what, a carrier when you've got a toddler, is life-saving. Having 2 free hands so that you can still help your older child, I found to be incredible. So if you didn't get it for your first baby and you're not sure for the second, I highly recommend them. And I do agree with you, there's so many baby wearing associations which have carriers, like weird and wonderful things I've never even seen before. And try before you buy is great, because they can be costly, and it's hard to know what to get. There's slings, there's wraps, there's carriers with buckles and clips. And I think it's great to be able to try it on. And like you said, every person's shape is different. So see what, feels good for you. So I love that. So,
and they even have ones that you can sit on your hip. So like if they really don't like this by about 3 or 4 months, like rather than forward facing, you can put them on your hip and then swap, getting equal time. I think that's amazing. Like,
there's so many options. It blows my mind. And I didn't realize the traditions of baby carrying either. Like if you go and look into different cultures, and like some of these women, I remember going to, where was I? Vietnam. And these women were carrying, they're like 4-year-olds, and they were these short-statured, petite little women effortlessly carrying these 4-year-olds in these backpack sling things. And I'm so impressed by how they did that. They made it look so easy, and they've just obviously worked it out for them and what works.
Yeah.
For them. And it was great.
I did remember there was one study on a culture. I can't remember, I'm drawing blanks here, but they would baby wear until 6 months, so they wouldn't even put their baby down, and it didn't really affect their motor development long term.
Yes. Yeah, I have heard women tell me, I haven't mastered it myself, maybe for a third baby I will, but you can breastfeed in a carrier.
You can, yeah.
The
kids running around and you at the park and trying to,
And I had a friend do it, and I couldn't even tell she was doing it.
No.
And I was like, oh, do you reckon they're hungry? She's like, oh, no, I just fed them. And I said, when? They haven't come out of the carrier.
And you start to really notice those early hunger cues too. So they're not even got to the crying. Yeah, so there's some amazing benefits of it.
Yeah.
But some people just they're not into it, and that's fine as well. Like everything's benefits. Got to pick the right thing to mix with your family and your values.
100%.
Carrier for all of my children so far, and they work so brilliantly for me and my kids. Now, I generally use a wrap for the newborn days, as I find it cozier, a bit more supportive, and easier to get on and off. And then once they get that little bit older and a little bit heavier, I use a more structured baby carrier with all the, clips and buckles and things like that. And I find it a great way to stay close and attached to my baby, to up those oxytocin vibes, but also to give me some freedom to have my hands free and be able to do other tasks throughout the day. And there are so many amazing things that you can get done whilst baby wearing. It's actually unbelievable. Now, if you'd like to learn more from Nicole, you can find her on Instagram at Nicole_Kids Physio. And as always, I would love to hear from you over on my socials at PhysioLaura, and let me know what your favorite learning was from this episode, and if you have or are considering baby wearing. Now, in the last episode of this Kids Physio series, we will be chatting with Nicole about baby toys and activity centres, whether we need them or not, and whether they are helpful or harmful to our child's development. If you haven't already, just subscribe to the Pregnancy with Physio Laura podcast so that you don't miss our upcoming episodes in this amazing series. And if you love today's episode and you want to watch all the episodes in this Kids Physio series all at once, you can find this entire series along with all our other podcast series that we've ever done right now inside the Pregnancy Posse. And for most series of the podcast, remember, we do record bonus content for Pregnancy Posse members. And in the bonus member-only episode for this Kids Physio series, Nicole shares with us 4 bonus videos demonstrating play-based activities and ideas for babies aged 0 to 3 months old. Now, inside the Pregnancy Posse, you'll also find weekly guided pregnancy workouts, an extensive resources library on birth preparation, pelvic floor exercises, and managing pelvic pain, plus a wonderful community forum and weekly Q&A sessions with me. Now, I would love to help you have a wonderful pregnancy, birth, and postnatal experience. So just visit thepregnancyposse.com to see what the Pregnancy Posse is all about and to trial it for 7 days. I will catch you soon for episode 5 in this 5-part Kids Physio series, where we'll be chatting all about baby toys and activity centres and whether they are something we should be spending our money on. Until then, mamas, sending you wonderful pregnancy vibes and enjoy the incredible journey that is pregnancy.